The previous video covered the concepts of why this play occurs and the importance of executing it effectively. This video will review the process for how to convince a mentee their diagnosis is wrong through actionable steps. Now let's go through the steps to take to effectively execute this play. First, you'll want to acknowledge that you and your mentee have different ideas about the root cause of the issue. Be humble. They've come to you for assistance and are likely in a crisis or a vulnerable state. Next, explain why you came to the diagnosis that you did and ask questions that'll help you understand why they came to the conclusion that they did. Do not use definitive statements. Ask them to explain why they think it's the diagnosis they chose. Make sure to acknowledge their reasoning. Also, make sure when you're explaining why you came to a different conclusion, you can let them know that in listening to the symptoms of the issue, you were drawn to something else, but say, however, I'm not in your shoes. What do you think about that as a root cause? Am I totally off base? Hopefully after this conversation, they'll agree or you can reach a common ground. If they don't agree, you can say, I'm not you, and obviously you know yourself better than I do. Can you help explain to me why you think that that's still your diagnosis? Hopefully if you've asked the right questions and if the mentee is receptive, you'll reach an agreement on the diagnosis. This will not always happen though. The next slide will take you through the steps if you and your mentee are not able to agree. If you are not able to get to an agreement, you've got a few options. First, you want to at least ensure that you've built a coaching moment. Do they trust you? Do they believe that you're on their side to make the coaching mantra real for them? Acknowledge that you may be wrong. You can say something like, I really think it's this, but we can agree to disagree. Ultimately, you're in control here. After all, it is their career. And lastly, put it in their court by asking them what steps they want to take. On this slide, we'll go over what an example of this play might look like. During a coaching session, your mentee Rhonda has shared with you that her performance in her role has declined, and now you need to crack the case, but are stuck on the co-diagnosing the issue step. Rhonda is diagnosing it as a lack of belief in her leader, but you think it might be due to her not assuming positive intent, which is part of being a great teammate. You can say, thank you for sharing your perspective. I considered that the assume positive intent aspect of be a great teammate could be the issue, that maybe you feel like your manager is hard to communicate with, but it seems like maybe you've been a little resistant to the feedback they've been offering. But I want to understand your thoughts. What do you think about that as a potential factor? Rhonda is not seeming receptive to this feedback and says, no, I really think it's my manager. When she tells me to do something, it seems like she's talking down to me. You can push a little more by saying, okay, can you explain a little more about how you feel like she's talking down to you? I want to make sure I fully understand your perspective. Now is when you'll realize if Rhonda will self-reflect and consider the validity of your diagnosis or if she'll stick to her original diagnosis. If she is receptive, great. If not, you should accept that your mentee is unwilling or unable to take accountability in this moment. So now is the time to let them take responsibility by figuring out next steps. You can say, thank you for explaining. Though we haven't reached a complete agreement, I want to support you. Ultimately, it's your career. What steps do you want to take? Rhonda says, I'd like to address the concerns about belief and leadership by having a conversation with my supervisor about how we can improve our communication with each other. Now you want to make sure you've created a coaching moment by showing her that you're on her side and want to make the coaching mantra real for her, and make sure that she feels supported along the way. You can say, that sounds proactive and I fully support you. I'm here to help you prepare for that conversation and provide any assistance you need. Let's develop a plan to address the performance issues together. Rhonda agrees. Because you were able to come to somewhat of a common ground, she trusts you and wants your continued support with the issue. And maybe she'll be receptive at some other time and will take more responsibility for the performance issue then. In conclusion, this play requires serious problem solving. You've got to listen, ask the right questions, and essentially create a rebuttal for your mentee's sake. Sometimes it's hard for people to see the truth in a problem, and as their coach and a third party, it might be way more obvious to us. So it's our job to bring it to their attention in the most respectful and caring way. When in doubt, you can always turn to the coaching mantra. Recite it to the mentee and ask them what it would take for them to get there. You aren't figuring this out on your own. Your mentee needs to be involved and in agreement with the diagnosis. I hope this training helps you as you navigate these situations. Remember, convincing a mentee that they might be wrong won't be easy, but you can work with them to try to reach a common ground so they can tackle any problem they face.